Good morning! Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond. We are a spiritual community and a center of liberal religion in Richmond with roots stretching back to 1830. My name is Alex Gecker, and I serve on our board of directors. If you are a visitor here today, our congregation welcomes you. We are so glad that you found us here in our virtual incarnation. In times of relative ease and times of great stress, whether for individuals or for our community at large, this church is a community guided not by a creed, but by a covenant to uphold shared principles marked by love, respect, and justice. We welcome you to live these principles with us as you continue your spiritual journey. We welcome you with all of your diverse identities as a whole, multifaceted, and beloved person. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to check out our website, join our Facebook group, and reach out by email to membership@richmonduu.org. And I hope everyone will consider stopping by our virtual coffee hour, which starts immediately after this service. There's a separate Zoom link that's available in the email from the church and also on Facebook. Even though we cannot physically be together today, I am glad we can still be together in spirit and share this experience. I hope you are well, and if you need support, I strongly recommend that you please reach out to our staff or the care team. With that, welcome to this joyful Sunday, made sacred by all of us being together, worshiping and sharing our time with each other.
Who could have imagined it? The profound effect of a pandemic at the very same time that changes are leading to all kinds of differing outcomes, including Mother Earth being better while the human family is not as well. We're tracking cases and deaths among us. The statistics frighten. And are they honest? Because look at all the places that are opening up despite the fact that they don't meet the criterion that were set early on in April for opening. This is a confusing time. This is a time where things are shutting down and opening up and doing all manner of things other than what we expected for this time of year. And yet, there is a new possible. There's a vision of something different coming to us. And if we pay attention, we might just recreate the world we live in. Welcome. Welcome to a time of worship, to a time of new possibility.
Our chalice-lighting words are adapted from Beatrice Hitchcock. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalism faith. It is an everlasting flame for this community. It offers its warmth to those who are cold. It provides light to those who would see. It purifies and transforms this congregation into sacred community. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, spark our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us.
Join me for a time of reflection and prayer. Spirit of oneness, spirit of life, in a time of suffering and dying. Spark in us the imagination to understand how we together can resist the forces of illness and death, can come together to flatten the curve, can use ourselves as witnesses to power, the collective, thoughtful power that we're all sharing for one another's safety. Spirit, grant us patience in dealing with all the uncertainty. For within the uncertainty, there need not be suffering. Teach us to see possibility where we have imagined dread, change, loss. To know the power of healing that resides in every hand, and the creativity with which we might yield kindness, decency, and love for one another. Spirit of life and of love, be vigorous in us, flow in us, make us people who, when we are encountered, bear the love of this community and share it generously. Help us to hold in mind and heart any and everyone who is hungry, who is lonely, who is unwell, who is dying. And teach us not to fear our deaths, our illnesses more than anything, because we ought to know that the failure to live fully may be worse. Allow us to be fully human, to trust the teachings of science, to rely on one another, to be patient, and not put people at risk, nor ourselves at risk. Spirit of life, bless this greater Richmond community, the far reaches beyond from which people travel electronically to be with us. May we imagine ourselves one great net of interrelationship and love, capable to reach out in so many places to make a difference. May it be so.
A reading by Thomas Merton. In a time of drastic change, one can be too preoccupied with what is ending or too obsessed with what seems to be beginning. In either case, one loses touch with the present and with its obscure but dynamic possibilities. What really matters is openness, readiness, attention, courage to face risk. You do not need to know precisely what is happening or exactly where it is all going. What you need is to recognize the possibilities and challenges offered by the present moment, and to embrace them with courage, faith, and hope. In such an event, courage is the authentic form taken by love. Thomas Merton, Connections of a Guilty Bystander.
In a time of COVID, the facts are before us. The differing health outcomes and experiences of people of color, of Latinx people, are being revealed. Access to healthcare, treatment in the healthcare system make a difference. The systems of oppression that have historically been with us, that created racist, white supremacist rules, laws, habits of mind, are with us. And a new possibility is that we could lay them bare and decide to change them. We could name racism. One of our great partners in the work of anti-racism, not only in fighting against racism, but for racial reconciliation, has been Richmond Hill. Richmond Hill has reached out to the wider Richmond metropolitan area and said, why is it so hard for people who live in one place in town to get to jobs in another? Let's challenge public transportation. They've said, why is it that people struggle to be in multiracial, multicultural communities? Let's make one. They've said, why is it that justice advocates can burn out so easily? Let's help them get rooted in an understanding of a spirituality and an interior life that sustains them in this very difficult work. Richmond Hill is one of our best allies and teachers in the work of racial reconciliation. That is why this month While Richmond Hill cannot receive visitors, cannot host groups, cannot facilitate retreats, they need us, and we know we need them. The offering for Share the Plate will now be taken. It will be taken for our partners in the work of fighting white supremacy and anti-racism. Please give generously to Share the Plate for Richmond Hill.
Now it is said that out of bad things, good things spring anew. It's not about lamentations, it's about what you can do. So crawl from under that old blanket, let sunlight guide your way. Just put a smile upon your face and make today a better day. And the art of the new possible will help you through your day. Though things are bad, don't feel so sad, we'll find a way. And once this all is all over, we'll look back and say that the art of the new possible showed another way. We're all alone in this together, it's the status quo today. So roll your sleeves up, wash your hands, and we will find a way. And the art of the new possible will help you through your day. Though things are bad, don't feel so sad, we'll find a way. And once this all is all over, we'll look back and say that the art of the new possible showed another way. Yes, the art of the new possible showed another way.
Just recently, I was thinking of a story I'd heard, a story that made a great deal of sense to me, and I went hunting for it and found it, sure enough, where I thought it might be, in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. It's a story about a great man, Admiral Jim Stockdale. Admiral Jim Stockdale was the senior-most military authority in what was known as the Hanoi Hilton, a prison in North Vietnam during the conflict. And he was the leader there of a large group of people who had been imprisoned by the North Vietnamese as prisoners of war, among them John McCain and others. And he was a wonderful leader, and I remembered this story. Jim Collins asked Admiral Stockdale what the experience had been like, and Stockdale had had an unenviable job. He had to get the people who were imprisoned there to resist inquisitions and terror and beatings from their guards to extract information from them. He had to encourage them, but know that they could not resist forever. So he set up a code for them of how to hold their heads up high, that if they were beaten and they could resist telling any information for 3 minutes, then they could claim a certain pride, even if they had to let information go after that in order to stay alive. Stockdale was beloved by his men because of the sense of resistance and resilience he built up in them. He would not allow them to imagine that they would not succeed, that they would not get out. He insisted. And Jim Collins asked the question of Stockdale: who was it who didn't survive? Who were the people who didn't make it? Stockdale, who was walking next to Collins, turned to him and said, "Oh, that's easy. The optimists didn't make it. They didn't survive." Jim Collins is a professor at Stanford who studies all kinds of business leadership, and he was so surprised to hear Stockdale's answer. He was sort of stunned. He was quiet. They continued walking along. And finally, Collins couldn't stand it anymore, and he said, I don't get it. Why didn't the optimists survive? I would have thought they were the people who would have had the heart to keep going and to believe the next good thing would happen. And Stockdale turned to him and said, the optimists imagined that by Christmas they'd go home. The optimists imagined that by Easter they'd go home, but Christmas came and Easter came and they never went home. And the beatings continued, and the starvation continued, and the illnesses continued. And the optimists lost heart because they had failed to take a full measure of the circumstances they were in. Stockdale said that they did not understand what they were up against. They just arbitrarily tried to be optimistic. But it was the people who understood what they were up against who did well, who thrived, who managed to keep going, to go 3 minutes before they gave over information, or to endure a little more. They were ready for hardship. Here we are, folks. Here we are. We want everyone to survive. And we can't be foolishly optimistic about our situation, nor should we be overly dire about it. It is what it is, as the popular phrase goes. And we have to see it clearly and understand it and be able to work within the framework we're given. But one of the things that's before us is a possibility, a new possibility that we are learning. Maybe not so much learning as remembering. But we've been going at a full tilt for a long time. We've allowed ourselves, since the middle of the 20th century, to make our lives busier and less focused on our home, to make prideful statements about how much work we can do, how organized we can be, how productive we are, how great we are at creating outcomes, and income. We've tried to equate ourselves with our work as though we were our work. And we are not our work. We've forgotten what it means to cook meals and to bake things and to make things and to have hobbies that are vitally important, that get us up in the morning because we want to create. And we'd forgotten We just assumed it was impossible to stop harming Mother Earth. We also didn't see things. We didn't want to see things. So, for example, the information has always been there that subjected to the strength of racism and white supremacy in America, people of color have always suffered physical effects that were greater. That when you compare for poverty and hold things constant, people of color have to carry all the injustice that they see and understand, that they receive and feel, and that kind of stress turned inward results in higher incidence of physical costs on the body. And therefore, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, these things are more prevalent in the communities of color, as they are more prevalent in communities of poverty, but even more so for people of color. And this is a reality that now is being manifest in the number of people who are dying above all proportion of the population. That people of color, their health situations being more difficult, are dying at higher numbers. Now, in this circumstance, isn't it a moral obligation for you and I to imagine that the things that are not working among us, health, home, workplace, inequality, that the things are not working well are to be examined and challenged? That people not having health care is a profound injustice that we must overcome. And as tens of millions of people lose their work, they lose their health care. We've got to fix this. So what are the new possibilities that we are capable of imagining? I say it's our moral duty to be radical about these things. I say it is the time in which we can imagine together anew, a different way. Just think about the ability to take a walk in the middle of the day. I've been reading a book lately by Timothy Egan called A Pilgrimage to Eternity. It's about his travels on the Via Francigena into Rome. His travels as a Catholic, as an older white man traveling through Europe on foot largely, not exclusively, to get to Rome and to confront questions of belief and other things. He runs into a priest at one of the abbeys. And the priest and he get to talking, and he's asking what the people are learning. And the priest says, well, the big thing is that people have time to think on the Via Francigena, and they think about big thoughts. They make big decisions. They're not all religious decisions, but it helps that the pilgrims have time. They can make quality decisions in time. And the priest reflects. This is what he says to Egan. I can only speak of my country. And here is the problem for Italians. 30 years ago, everybody took a siesta in the afternoon. Rest, relax, sleep a little. Now, everyone works all the time. It's all about work and money. Lavoro e soldi. Lavoro e soldi. People don't have time to think today. They start walking on the Via Francigena, and now they have time. More time than they've ever had in their life, and they can make good, quality decisions. Even though they're out of practice thinking, a lot of people do the Via, and they do not even go into a church building, but they practice walking mindfulness. And he stifles a chuckle. Mindfulness, says the priest. They used to call it living. Many of us are experiencing more space and time than we thought we had before. Even working a lot, you still have more time. We're experiencing that, and we're asking ourselves, why are things the way they are? Why do we work so endlessly? Why doesn't anybody take a siesta during normal times? And yet we can realize the wisdom of it now. The importance of having time and space to think and to imagine. To imagine things like, now that every child isn't in a classroom, maybe every child's need for learning could be met at the level they're at without stigma. Maybe health outcomes as opposed to health entitlement is the goal. Maybe racism is so impoverishing of certain people, such a heavy weight, that we can start to say aloud that allowing it to continue to exist, to fail to confront it, which is part of our Richmond pledge, to fail to confront it is wholly, completely unacceptable, and we must do it together. Maybe we can imagine commuting so much less that Mother Earth begins to heal, that the temperature doesn't continue to rise radically, that the storms don't have to brew quite so much, that the oceans won't warm as fast. And if that's possible, can we go the other direction? Can we reduce it so much the oceans would be restored completely? You know, at this particular time, we may be preoccupied with a big pandemic, but we have a moral obligation to imagine what is possible, to think about the things that could radically alter our lives in ways that improve them for everyone, from the youngest among us to the eldest, from the people with the most money being brought back into community with the people who have the least, and some equivalence worked out so that wages for people who work a full week should allow them to be living wages, so that every child has access to technology and learning, so that all of us do not become our work, but rather have hobbies and lives that are rich and valuable apart from our professions, and our ideas become more well thought out. What is the possibility you know about? What are you imagining? How do we together as a community begin to talk about this and make the kinds of commitments to action that turn the temporary nature of how life is into the permanent quality of what life becomes? We have to imagine. We have to think clearly. Maybe we have to start by taking a siesta. But I invite us all to consider the possibilities we know, so that the world becomes a place thought, imagined, and lived with love and community. Our benediction this morning focuses in on that great oak you saw earlier this spring. Well over 170 years, it's been there, spreading out its branches and its leaves. The sun shines through it in the winter, but it filters to a deep green all summer, the light. It is home to many squirrels and birds, and it is a gift. Let us be like this oak, our roots down in community, drawing richly from what we give one another. Our limbs lifted in a belief that we will get through this time, not with a false optimism, not with naivete, but with a deep and abiding trust and hope in one another. And let us rise to meet the moment, because there is a new possibility awaiting. We need only dream it. Blessed be everyone. I hope you have a great week. I hope it's a week full of possibility. And we'll see you here again next week. Me and you and the oak, and all will be well.
To all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and will give them garlands instead of ashes. Or we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.